Okay, thank you, Madam Director, for this relevant input. I think, honorable members, you have listened the effort doing and made by our government to modernize our system and to be in conformity with the international convention with the respect of human rights. Now, let me add on what they said, generally some element with regard of refugee, migrant, and internal displaced.
I will give some overall information. There was a question about freedom of movement for refugees, migrants, and IDPs. Now, Cameroon has over 500,000 refugees, mostly from the CAR, some from Nigeria, Rwanda, but also from a number of other nationalities. The policy, the hosting policy for refugees in our country is based on the Global Compact on Refugees and UNHCR's program. 2 years ago, rather, the High Commission made a visit. I was part of that. We went to a number of refugee camps, particularly in the far north, Minawao, one of the largest camps for refugees. The identification issue was raised. We have an assimilation policy, meaning that we don't distinguish particularly between nationals and refugees, particularly since most of them are from neighboring countries like Nigeria, and they have all rights, all basic rights, the right to shelter, health, education, to freedom of expression, to education. The Office of the High Commissioner for Refugees with partners is helping our government to build schools, and refugees are admitted to basic education, secondary and higher education. So we have this policy which is in line with the international conventions and with human rights generally. Migrants' rights are protected. On transit, we attach great importance to their rights. On identification, there is an issue of budgeting. Working with UNHCR, our government is creating a special program. We have to count the number of refugees and monitor it. That is being done by both our government and UNHCR. There was a question on mass graves. Now, as ambassador of Cameroon, that's the first time I've heard mention of these. We have been monitoring to avoid this type of abuse. We do not have this type of mass killing. And that information would need to be verified. Information comes from civilians sometimes who report mass graves, but our government is not carrying out mass killings. So when cases are reported, the state institutions investigate. Nationally and internationally, we are working to ensure that human rights are protected. I was horrified to hear that there could be mass graves in Cameroon, but if there is reliable information, then we could seek to investigate. Maybe some exist and the government doesn't know about them. So I wanted briefly to allude to that. Coming back to refugees now, we were asked about IDPs. These are Cameroonese citizens in our social tissue. We have a hosting policy. In my family, there are lots of people who've come from the northwest and the south west, and we take them in. Families take them in. I'm not going to say that everything is perfect, but in that connection, the government is keeping an eye on matters to ensure that all Cameroonese people have their rights respected wherever they are, their basic rights as citizens. And we don't have any hierarchy among our citizens. They all have the same rights and responsibilities under the law. Distinguished members, this is some preliminary information that we're able to give on that, and we will certainly have more details to add.
On
English.
okay, on military court. Okay, you can go on, please.
This issue of civilians being tried before military tribunals has come up over and over again. But it is important to precise that in the Cameroon judicial system, the military tribunal is not an exceptional court, but a court under ordinary law with special jurisdiction. So it is clearly stated in Article 2, Sub 1 of the Code of Military Justice. What I have just said, it is clearly stated in Article 2, Sub 1 of the Code of Military Justice. And on reading the provisions of Article 8 of the Code of Military Justice, it is generally clear that this tribunal has jurisdiction over military offenses. There are many of them. I will not go to. In the Cameroon judicial system, the military tribunal is not an exceptional court, but a court under ordinary law with special jurisdiction. So it is clearly stated in Article 2, Sub 1 of the Code of Military Justice. What I have just said, it is clearly stated in Article 2, Sub 1 of the Code of Military Justice. And on reading the provisions of Article 8 of the Code of Military Justice, it is generally clear that this tribunal has jurisdiction over military offenses. There are many of them. I will not go to list them. It's a long list. They are contained in Articles 30 to 67 of the Code of Military Justice. It is important for me to come back to training. The magistrates who preside over the military tribunals go through the same schools like the civil magistrates. They all have the same curriculum. They go through the National School of Administration and Magistracy and receive the same training. And when military magistrates sit, they don't sit alone. There are always civilian magistrates who sit with them. And even when matters go on appeal, you still have civilian magistrates. In fact, there is no military court of appeal in Cameroon. The court of appeal are there to hear cases emanating from lower civilian courts as well as the military tribunal. So all appeals go to the court of appeal. And again, there you have civil magistrates who sit with the military magistrates. So, moreover, persons prosecuted before military tribunals, whether be they civilian or military, benefit from the guarantees of a fair trial in the same way as those prosecuted before other criminal courts. It is clear from the provisions of Articles 13, 15, 19, and 25 of the Code of Military Justice that the rules governing the initiation and conduct of public prosecutions and the rendering of judgments are those of the ordinary law, which means that the criminal procedure code which applies in civilian courts is the same criminal procedure code that is used in the military courts. In addition, as I already said, decisions handed down by the military tribunal may be appealed before the Court of Appeal in the same way as decisions handed down by all other courts of first instance. And to conclude, no binding international instrument prevents the trial of civilians by military tribunals, provided that the law is respected and the parties are guaranteed a fair trial. Thank you.
On top this issue, I tell you, say, now a question session where it take place for almost 48 hours. That's 2 days, right? And we still get a lot of material represented for now, as far as things that be concerned. But my dear brother, my dear sister, ladies and gentlemen, fellow ambassadors, when we really follow up the answer the way these people in the Guiana, La République, their delegation to Geneva, Switzerland, where they Guiana, if you really follow up their answer, then nobody you go even don't know say a lie. There is trouble so for lie where no they them. They don't even look people they say for their face. Now only lie they come out for their mouth. They say that other man talks say no, you don't know that anything like say mass grave they ever they exist. They don't know that anything like say mass grave they exist. Say oh they get ITP then, they get this, they get that. ITP they go carry rice will not expire, go there for them. And but they stay for Douala ya on the other side. They will call sometimes say they give them ground oil, they give them this, they give them that. They can't make that thing one time for inside almost 7 months. But they don't carry budget, then the thing go chop up. Go carry expire rice, then they give people. Then they talk how they take care for ITP. Say he get people ready for your house. He get this, he get that. The other woman can't talk how they know they try civilian for military court. Say no, for military court they get civil magistrate and they get civilian magistrate and they get military magistrate, or they go through the same training, blah 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 for a now, this and that. Why would they go charge? Why would they go judge civilian for military court? Why would they go judge for military court? Go for Bonidi Central Prison, go for Bamenda, go for Boya, go for kind places. People in day they are cased in for military court. Why? Why? People they lie. When we see the kind of lies, wait till they come for our mind. That for tell una say, Ambazonians need to rally themselves and do the job. We need to put more pressure. We need to rally ourselves, mobilize ourselves, come together as a one man, we talk with one voice, to do the job. This is the only way forward. And the only way forward now because La Republic they be embedded. That means they inside it, they are lying. Not be today they start lying. Not be today they start lying. Don't they lie since they don't lie. All those things are all lies. People they didn't get that. They suffer. They don't know say that this. They don't know say that. There is nothing like torture. They don't know say mass grave and they don't know say this and they don't know say this and that. The whole world is here. The last time we time. Don't forget to share the video as far as you can. Me reach that La Republic agent them, and me reach for that Anglo food them. Me they say see the lie with their own people and they lie. Anyhow, we shall overcome. As soon as I give my next update, I will bring maybe some of this video then we'll wrap up on. We'll get a summary of this particular event where it take place. Write in the comment section. United against torture. Hashtag United against torture. Hashtag Cameroon. Thank you.